May I start?
Yeah, so the recording started now, so yeah, you may start.
My time starts now. Madam Speaker, rather than we think that today we should actually make failure as a best teacher, our side is actually going for the individual's preferences, while we think that we should actually make them work hard at the first place to make them succeed. Good evening, Madam Speaker. I'm the Prime Minister of today's debate. And first, before I move on to my arguments, I'd like to first give up our setup and how our team's stance is. First of all, I'd like to define a few key terms of this debate. First, failure is the best teacher. I'd like to define this as failure gives you motivation for you to succeed in a further extent. Secondly, I'd like to give you a definition about the narrative, which means that the general idea and morality. So now I'd like to move on to our team's criteria. Our team's criteria is going to be that we see that then rather to experience failure at the first and experience the sadness and depression, we are saying, going for the motion that we're saying, why not work hard at the first place and make you succeed to actually get your fulfillments? Moving on to our stakeholders in this debate. The stakeholders in this debate can be failures or people who have failed in the past but have succeeded, and so on and so forth. Moving on to our team split. I, as the first speaker, would first like to give you our first and second argument about this narrative justifies failure, and second, what is the preference of the people. Our most capable Deputy Prime Minister would give you our third argument about mental harms, for example, mental stress, etc., etc. Now, since I've already given you our setup, I'd like to move on to our first argument, which is going to be about this narrative justifies failure. Why is failure not justified? We strongly believe that this motion is actually getting the idea that failure is okay, but we strongly believe that if this failure is intentional, or if this failure is purposeful, we strongly believe that failure cannot be justified in any extent, because we see that, yes, we agree that sometimes if you fail, it's all right, but we don't see why we should actually fail if there's already a chance that you can work to the best and strive to the best and go to the succeed months, that if it's possible. We don't see why we should fail. And for example, if you actually have a study to do, and if you fail, we see that why not study harder at the first time to actually reach succeeding, rather than to get depression and to get sadness of your failure in the so on and so forth, and you just try again and try to succeed. We see that if we do this, we will be able to prevent, first of all, we will be able to prevent that it's going to be utilized. We're going to prevent the idea that it's going to be working hard, studying hard at the first place, rather than to fix your problems at the later, in the later point of view. Moving on to our second argument, Madam Speaker, it's going to be about what is the preference of the people. I think I've already discussed this in my first argument, but I'd like to go on depth with what the individual's preferences are. Of course, if you're an individual, you'd rather like to experience succeed than failure, and this is something that's in human nature. We strongly believe that this human nature would be able to be succeedable, and we think that this can actually fulfill the individual itself. We don't see why. Yes, failures can be teachers to give you your mistakes, but we agree in the idea that if you do it at the first time, which is totally our stance, if you do hard at the first time, we think that it's going to actually lead to more benefits and more better consequences in the later point of view. And that's why we're here to debate this motion, Madam Speaker. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, what our team is going for is that side-up proposition is giving a world where you can succeed at the first place, and you can actually don't have any sadness or any depression that comes from failure, while side opposition is making a world where there might be depression and failure before going on to the succeed months. For these reasons, Madam Speaker, I am more than proud to propose to this motion. Thank you for listening to my speech.
I thank the speaker for that speech. Now let's invite Leader of Opposition. Here.
May I start? Good evening, Madam Speaker. Today we're here to discuss the motion of whether the narrative that failure is the best teacher has done more harm than good. And we as opposition believe that it is actually good for the people. Madam Speaker, I actually want to go straight to the rebuttal. So the government suggested that we are under the constitution, that everyone's a safe, but I want to point out that there are people who fail too. And they said that why not actually work hard to take first place? But even if you do it hard, there can be people who are not really doing well in those. They may fail. They will explain. We will explain later specifically, but I will talk about it briefly. Because there are people who fail, the narrative gives passion and let people keep on going. They actually cheer those people who are achieving their dreams. So, Madam Speaker, we live in a society where there are lots of failures. Maybe you failed going to schools you want, you failed your test, or you failed going into the company you wanted to get into. You may even fail to buy an ice cream you wanted to buy. Have you ever failed on something? Maybe ticketing for a concert, or you wanted to do something, but it was actually sold out. How do you actually feel about this? If you fail to get a ticket to concert, do you just feel like I am an unlucky person? No, you may get mad about the results you got, but wouldn't you think you will access into the website earlier than you went before? Madam Speaker, the narrative is failure is the best teacher. Here, I would like to define what the best teacher is. It will be something that can actually teach people valuable things and give chance to be a better one. So, Madam Speaker, we agree with the House that we disagree with the House that narrative failure is the best teacher has done more harm than good. For 3 reasons. First, it actually gives passion to people that the narrative helps stay strong. Our second speaker will talk about even if you failed, it is experience. You actually experience many things more than you expected from the process you came through. And our third speaker will talk about what you actually gain from this, what kind of situation you can actually come up with. So I'd like to start our first argument with the passion you get from the narrative, failure is the best teacher. Madam Speaker, do you have someone you respect? Maybe your parents, professors, teachers, other people in history. Those people you respect say something that can actually help you directly, which is declaration. By looking at those declarations and works they've done, those people want to be like who they respect. This narrative is what you can actually get passion from. This says failure isn't just a negative thing, and it can actually give bigger opportunity for you not to give up on something easily, and you have the motivation that can make you a better person. What I want to point out here is not just that failure is good for passion, but also you get valuable experience and recognize you that this failure is not only a bad thing. Even if you fail, it's not that you failed. You are actually having great chances to be better and better every day. Motion for this motion is for young to elderly, old people. This is enough for you to encourage you. So, Madam Speaker, we strongly believe that this narrative failure is the best teacher has done more good than harm. Thank you.
I thank the speaker for that speech. Now let's invite Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
May I start? So, Madam Speaker, don't you think that if there is a failure that comes to human beings, that will have they will bring also the same things such as suspicions on their abilities. Human beings will actually suspicious or think again about their abilities because of the failures. So I'm the Deputy Prime Minister of this debate. So in my speech, I will like to rebut our team's arguments, rebut to their team's argument, elaborate our team's last argument. So first go on to the rebuttals on our team's first argument. Our team's first argument was about the narrative justifies of the failure. That actually said that there are people that can fail in this point. But Madam Speaker, we see the opposition is actually assuming the idea that someone will also fail. This is actually true. However, we see that the moral point of the view is the point of the view is that there are failures that actually can happen, but because of those narratives and myths of itself is nothing to link directly to the real life. Because they actually said that because they can have people that can actually fail, however, the fails actually brings to another fail, and it makes the other people actually think again about their abilities, making those people actually be depressed on their world. So moving on to their first argument, which is about it will actually give motivation to those people by failures, and also it will have bigger opportunities about those failures. However, this is totally wrong because if at the first place, they will have no motivation because they will actually think that if you actually fail, then they will think that, oh, I'm so bad at something because I have failed, meaning that they will actually quit this, will not give up, even they will not give a motivation to one doing something. Because if there's a failure on one thing, the people actually think about again of their abilities and how they actually do on something, meaning that they will have some mental harms and also mental stress, what we'll actually like to talk in our last argument, which is about mental harms. Because people actually have some failures that actually, as the opposition said, however, because people actually think about or be suspicious about their abilities on doing one task or doing one task or doing one achievement, they'll actually, if they actually fail on the first place, they'll actually think about one thing, and also they will have a mental stress about, they will think that there will be a failure on their life because they actually think that failure is too big harm on their side. Because more than there's team thinks that there will be a development on those failures. However, we think that because we don't actually give those development on the first place, and also we actually think that there is a mental harm and mental stress on those achievements or failures of those achievements. If they have an actually failure on those achievements, they'll actually have some stress, and also they will think, or they will actually be depressed on the result of failure. More than actually having a failure and being motivated, as they actually said, I think that because it actually brings so much mental harm of those results that actually failed, as our first speaker has said, we actually like to first not fail and get a good result. I will actually try hard to not get failed and be a successful person, not getting a failure and get a mental stress and get a success. We actually do not want to get those mental stress. We actually get a success more than getting a mental stress. In conclusion, I'm proud to.
Okay, I thank the speaker for that speech. Now let's invite Diallo. Here.
Hello, can you hear me well? May I start? Good evening, Madam Speaker. We disagree with the House, which believes that the narrative that failure is the best teacher has more harm than good. I think that even though you didn't succeed, there is something you learn from the failure. Before moving on my argument, I want to say something about the proposition speaker's argument. All the proposition speaker said were not proven and just ideas, no facts. So I don't think that I have to refute it so properly. Madam Speaker, we disagree with the House, which believes that the narrative that failure is the best teacher has more harm than good. I think that even though you didn't succeed, there is something you learn. Madam Speaker, everyone failed at least once in their life. The failure can be a mistake, having a bad grade in the test, couldn't get something what you wanted, and I think even though you failed the processes, you tried to do something itself is a great education. Madam Speaker, everyone who does something will have an experience that what you already did before is much easier to do next time. When you are doing an experiment, you get information about that experiment. Then next time when you do the experiment again, your memory of doing the experiment helps you do the experiment. Madam Speaker, what I want to say is that if you did it, no matter you succeeded or failed, it becomes an experience and knowledge and memory which will help you do that thing again. Madam Speaker, I want to tell you that I'm not just saying my ideas. You know Thomas Edison, the genius inventor. While he was trying to make filament light bulb, he failed thousands of times, but he got knowledge by the thousands of experiences. So as a result, he succeeded. Let me give you another example. You know Marie Curie, the scientist who found polonium and radium. While trying to find radium, she failed thousands of times too. But what she did was got knowledge and used that in the next experiment. As a result, he found radium. To summarize, I think that failure actually gives you something. You try to do something, experience it, no matter you succeeded or failed, you get knowledge by experiencing it. I also gave examples of people who succeeded by using the failure and experience and knowledge. I want to repeat it. I think that failure actually gives you something. The process is important and you'll learn from it that it's done. It's great. Madam Speaker, for these reasons, I disagree with the House, which believes that the narrative that failure is the best teacher has more harm than good. Thank you for listening, Madam Speaker. 와, 진짜 말 많이 안 했다.
I thank the speaker for that speech. Now let's invite Government Whip. Here.
May I start? So my time starts now. Judge, in my speech, I will be bringing you three main clashes that have happened during this speech. First, the development of people. Second, how the narrative of failure changes and which one is better. And finally, about mental stress. First clash. Well, we believe that through this narrative, all that is creating is that it is justifying failure. If you fail, instead of feeling the need to be able to fix that problem, what people think because of this narrative is that, oh, all that happened was I learned from the best teacher. That's it. We think that feeling the need to fix their problems is the very main thing you must do to be able to succeed in the end. This narrative is only not allowing that to happen. And secondly, we think that Secondly, in our side, obviously, people will be incentivized to be able to fail or be able to succeed without failing. If this happens, obviously, well, there are going to be many benefits. You're going to have more time to be able to develop different skills or even that one skill. And you're going to be able to avoid many side effects that I'll be stating further on in my speech. And there are arguments about motivation. However, I already explained to you how there isn't going to be that much of an incentive to be able to work hard. And secondly, even if it were true, just like I said, people are not going to develop, which means that, and motivation, just because you have that doesn't mean you win automatically. You also need to be able to develop and have a skill. Second clash. Second clash. What their side is doing through this narrative is like I stated. First of all, they're justifying failure, de-incentivizing people to be able to develop nor feel the need to be able to fix their own problems. We think that if this goes on, then obviously people are just going to stay as the very stupid, weak person as they are. In the end, they're going to feel sad about the end result, not even knowing why it happened, which that reason is the narrative. Final clash, which is mental stress. Well, first of all, like if you don't fail in the first place, which is much more likely to happen in our side, since they are afraid of failure and they're more incentivized to avoid it. The first failure you've ever experienced is the most shocking thing in the world. We prevent that from happening. Secondly, in the long term, if you just don't develop and you're staying so stupid, then obviously your entire life is going to be ruined. We think that this is going to cause much bigger depression, and it is going to help you stay. And their point that is going to help you stay strong. In the end, there are just too many failures, and in the long term, your entire life is ruined as well. Even if your side did, in fact, help people develop, we think that this side effect is way too large, and we don't think that this is worth it. For these reasons, our side clearly takes all three clashes, and this debate I am more than proud to propose.
I thank the speaker for that speech. Now let's invite opposition whip. Here.
May I start? Madam Speaker, there is a narrative that failure is the best teacher. What would best teacher be like? Teaching most valuable things, managing the student's posture or behavior. Madam Speaker, we can learn this all by failure. We learn a lot of things like experiences or behaviors from this. Then isn't this actually the best teacher? This narrative, failure is the best teacher, lets you to be strong when you failed. If you can't take the failure, you cannot gain experiences from that failure. This narrative actually makes you take failure not as failure, but education, where you actually learn stuff. This behavior would not only let us gain something, but also will let us gain experiences and knowledges every time you fail. You would not be discouraged, but would try to find what you did wrong, and it will eventually make you not fail in the same way. As a failure, you will only lose, but as an education, you will gain. And this is what we want to do. In any circumstance, you lose nothing. You gain something. You educate yourself. And this behavior comes from this idea that failure is the best teacher. Failure is different in how you see it. And you learn because you failed. Babies can finally walk because they fell a lot. Birds can fly because they tried and tried. If birds felt the first falling as failure, they wouldn't grow. They wouldn't learn from it. because they learned how they fell. They wouldn't fall again in the same way. If you would take a test and fail it, it would be a failure. However, if you actually try to find how you failed it, it will be a lesson. Without this narrative, you can't do this. You will just put yourself harsher without any efforts for finding the cause. Madam Speaker, we also want to create a situation where people are not so negative or positive, but try to actually search for a cause and learn how to not do it. What their speaker basically said was in circumstance where they prefer failure. What we are saying is that people will not be positive or negative too much, but actually learn and teach themselves. Does this narrative tell you to fail, or does it tell you to actually stand the failure and gain from it? Their second speaker talked about a situation where they will think they should give up. However, it will be bigger stress and depression if you take it as failure. In this sense of giving up, at least they learn something, taking as education, not as failure, and they will benefit in mental health-wise. Their third speaker talked that they will prevent failure. Madam Speaker, we cannot prevent failure. Failure can come out in any direction. What we want to do is creating a situation where if you fail, at least you gain. So it will not be a failure and you will still gain. What they basically said was this, that this motion, this narrative can't be guaranteed. However, this is actually guaranteed because what do you learn? You learn that failure is not the end. Failure is not the end, and you can still continue on with the gains you got this from failure. So failure cannot be a failure if you follow the narrative. And because this narrative will benefit to us all, we believe that the narrative that failure is the best teacher has done more good than harm. Thank you.
I thank the speaker for the speech. Now let's invite opposition reply. Here.
May I start? Madam Speaker, we have just discussed the motion on whether it is fair that the narrative, the failure is the best teacher, has done more harm than good. The main purpose of this motion was to find whether doing this is the benefit to us all. To find fairness in all directions, to come as close as to a reasonable, practicable, and effective solution possible. We believe that our team has provided enough evidence to prove that the opposition to the motion is more agreeable. First, we disagree with the motion because this narrative of failure is the best teachers actually help you and be your motivation for you to improve, and this narrative delivers the meanings about the failure not being only negative effects but helping them. Second, we said that even though you fail, you did it, no matter you success or fail itself is a great education. And we also gave you example of people who got knowledge from failure. Third, we said that we need a behavior where they learn from failure. We proved this by saying that your lesson by failure is a gain. The first speaker said why not actually work hard to take first place. And because individuals can put effort themselves, you actually do not need negative. Also, the negative depends on each people. The second speaker talked about failure being not positive to people because by repeating the process of failure, people are being negative too. The third speaker talked about the failure causing depression and shocking things and that your whole life can be ruined. The propositions claimed were without just reason, no solid fact. We urge Madam Speaker to come over their claims with fact, not just theories. To conclude, we believe that our suggestion was more merit in terms of a gain for us all, both in short term and long term. We strongly urge you again to make a decision based on the fact provided, not just on realistic claims that have been made by the proposition. Thank you so much for your time and consideration, Madam Speaker.
I thank the speaker for that speech. Now let's invite here.
May I start? Josh, the narrative that failure is the best teacher, allows the people to fail. We don't get why the opposition wants this, and this is why we propose on today's debate. Without further, let's move on to the criteria. We will win this debate when we prove you that rather than failing, people working hard and their passionate manner at the first place is better. We successfully proved to you this criteria when we told you how people don't want to fail at the first place, and they always want to rock, and they always want to do good whatever they do. Without having that said, let's move on to the world comparison and versus opposition. They create a world where people don't concern seriously about failure. Even if failure should be improved, the citizen in opposition only get depression, but nothing. It is pretty sad. They have the teacher that you don't even want. And let's now look at the government's world. We work hard for success. Your eager and passionate manner will be your teacher. We don't justify failure because that it stops you from striving for success. We provide high percentages of succeeding. We will achieve the primary goal of today's discussion. Now I would like to discuss about why is our world so good and why is our world superior. Firstly, I want to talk about we make people's success better. Firstly, opposition. People in opposition don't have the incentive to rock at your work because that they think failure is okay, and that continues over and over again. Opposition cannot develop themselves. Opposition stays the same all the time. Let's now look at the government's world. We give the messages to the society. We should avoid failure. We will make the society do the best since we make passion as our teacher. Let's look at the flaws now. Their main point was obviously that failure is not just failure. We learn from whatever. And let's prove this is wrong. They added the point about the people you admire. Well, we are confused. Why are they talking about this? This is completely irrelevant of today's round. We noticed that the government has no proper layer of analysis. Oh, they actually provided one, which was totally nonsense. It is sad that every single speakers keep being repetitive without a reasoning. Judge, we are supposed to negotiate and try to convince each other, but our interesting opposition don't want to debate with us, and this is why we take this debate home proud to oppose.